this week we got an announcement from Warner Brothers Home Entertainment that they're going to be releasing the Zack Snyder trilogy on Blu-ray. Now,
Mhm.
this is a trilogy of movies that Zack Snyder worked on, from Man of Steel to Batman vs. Superman, the Ultimate Edition, which includes 30 extra minutes of footage that was cut out of the theatrical cut, which clearly Zack Snyder wanted to leave in there. So his version is like the Ultimate Edition. And then, of course, we have the Snyder cut of Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League,
Mhm.
in its original 4:3 format, like not the one we got in theatrical in 2017, but the one we got in HBO Max in 2021. All three of these movies are getting packaged together for the first time in like a collector's edition for people to buy, and pre-orders are now on Amazon. They're already live. You can pre-order it, and I think they released this trilogy on October 3rd. So this is the first time they sort of put those three specific versions of the movie together in a collection. Whereas in the past, we have always gotten like the official versions, like the theatrical version of
Yeah.
Justice League and the theatrical version of Batman Superman and then Man of Steel. So in a week where Blue Beetle has had a 61% drop from its opening weekend, while lower than The Flash and Shazam 2, considering where it started, 61% drop means is now in single digits in terms of millions of dollars. And that movie is probably not going to make his budget back. And it's going to be probably the third or fourth movie in a row that's going to barely make its budget, if not at all, like it's going to be in the red. And so DCEU properties seem to be struggling really, really hard. However, in a time like that, somehow anything related to Zack Snyder like seems to be making headlines, and it seems like the fandom is still more interested in what Zack Snyder did years ago, and now Warner Brothers is trying to like reach out to that audience and saying, "Hey, we do address you guys for the first time since 2021 when they released the Snyder Cut in any level of significance." What does this mean? I mean, does this mean they're kind of finally putting they're kind of making peace with that Snyder fan base and saying, "Hey, come along for the ride on this new DCU, but let's kind of put a bow on this old era and call, like shake hands on it and then move on together." Is that
You
what
know,
this is?
I don't know if I can speak to this, Dan. I know you're the DCU Daily Man. I feel like I wasn't really around for the drama. Like, can you just give like a brief recap on what happened with Zack Snyder? Like, it feels like I
So
always hear sort of like tidbits of there was a lot of drama and Warner Brothers did Zack Snyder dirty, but like I don't know what happened.
they basically panicked after Batman versus Superman. Like, remember I mentioned like there's two versions of that movie. There's
Yeah.
the Ultimate Edition. The one we got in theaters has 30 minutes removed from it, which for a movie that had a very complex plot and a lot of subplots,
That's a lot of
those
time to remove.
30 minutes. And those 30 minutes, like when you look at the version, the Ultimate Edition with all that information in there, it gave you way more context and it really fleshed out a lot of the movie's nuances. And it really felt like that was a very late cut that was clearly made by the studio because all the effects were done and everything made sense. It wasn't like they did any reshoots to cut around all that information that they left out. They just simply cut it out of the theatrical version. So they already made some mistakes there. And then Batman v Superman underperformed. And one of the reasons was because people were like, it's too convoluted. There's way too much going on. It's too dark. And I thought the Ultimate Edition kind of helped solve some of those problems.
Mhm.
Not all the problems. Like, it was still a dark movie. Superman still dies at the end. But, like, I think people understood a much more complete narrative with those 30 minutes included. And a runtime that without the 30 minutes was 2.5 hours. I think, we've seen Avengers movies that are 3 hours. And you can
Yeah.
clearly put one out. But from then to right around that time that movie was out in theaters, they were producing the Justice League movie. And Zack Snyder, like, basically it was already working on the film and in production. So it wasn't like they were pre-production. They were well into production on the film.
Yeah.
And Warner Brothers panicked and they decided, okay, we can't let you just have carte blanche with this franchise anymore. And so they decided like to give him extensive notes that, okay, lighten the mood up, change this, change that. Around that time, one of Zack Snyder's daughters committed suicide. And so his personal life just became, like, you can imagine, like a living hell for a parent losing their
Yeah.
child. And so he just lost the will to like fight back against the studio interference as a creator, which is something that happens. A lot of directors,
Yeah.
it's a back and forth and you find the balance, but it seemed like he was fighting a losing battle and he just didn't have the will to do it anymore. So he steps away from the project. And then Warner Brothers still wanted to release the movie in its original uh, release time, which was November of 2017, because then all the executives could get their bonuses for the end of the year. And so they brought in Joss Whedon, who's a very different filmmaker. So I'm, like he has to try to adapt this what was already pretty far along with Zack Snyder. The movie was already mostly shot, and then from there they basically decided that we're gonna rewrite this whole movie and then reshoot half of it or more than half of it, and they did. And so the
I
version
do vaguely remember. Okay, I do vaguely remember
very
about
different.
this.
So ultimately, like Zack Snyder, it just felt like he got screwed out of his own movie. And then in 2021, they finally gave him like $70 million to go back and complete his version of the film, which was already mostly shot. They had to finish a lot of visual effects, and then they did some additional photography. But yeah, it just felt like Zack Snyder ultimately went from having like carte blanche with Man of Steel and then Batman
and just kind of got pushed out. Yeah,
completely pushed out. And yeah, like people like his version of the stories better than the ones that Warner Brothers put out with all of their notes and interference. So I just feel like now there's some more reconciliation that's being done here. Because what they don't want to have happen is all that
Man
baggage.
of Steel did way better than any of the recent.
People don't give it enough credit.
I liked
it made
that
like
movie.
$700 million.
It did way better than the ones that have been coming out lately.
Yeah, way better. It made like over $500 million, which a DC movie hasn't done since Aquaman did it in 2018. So
crazy.
But it's, to me, what this is basically Warner Brothers saying, look, we're going to launch this reboot of the DCU, and all of these new stories are going to be out there. What we don't want to have happen is all this negative press where we keep getting these hashtags or restore the Snyderverse and everything. So here you guys go. There's a collector's edition. Let's put a period on this era with Zack Snyder, and let's move beyond it together. So it's almost like they're reaching out with their hand and a line and saying, let's be friends. You love DC, we love DC. Let's move forward together in a new direction.
They're olive branching it. That's definitely what it sounds like.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that's, I mean, I'm sure it's going to do well.
Is it a hint towards maybe them asking Zack Snyder to come back in the future? Is that what you're hoping for?
I don't know. I would think that it'd be misconstruing what's going on to say that this means that Zack Snyder's coming. Because when you look at it, the Rebel Moon trailer just dropped. That's a 2-part movie that's meant to be a whole franchise. He's got a deal with Netflix that's not going to end anytime soon. And it's not a deal that forbids him from doing anything for another studio. But I just don't think Zack Snyder's going to be free enough. He's not going to have enough time on his schedule to go and direct. I mean, maybe they can build something into their schedule years from now.
Yeah.
But I just don't think anytime soon in the next couple of years we will see anything from Zack Snyder that's DC related. And certainly you also got to imagine he's got to have interest in the project. Warner Brothers can come to him with 10 ideas and he maybe, I don't care about any of them. And I just want to do what I'm doing at Netflix, where I'm working on stuff that I've created and not a property where you're going to like give me 1,000 notes and make me change my vision. So Zack Snyder is a very altruistic filmmaker. So I do believe that maybe one day we will see him back in the world of DC movies, but I just don't think that's happening anytime soon. This feels
DC definitely needs to do something very quickly, you guys. Yeah. The DC, the last 5 movies have tanked. 5, right?
Black Adam, Flash, Shazam 2, now Blue Beetle.
I liked The Flash. That's what's crazy.
The Suicide Squad. Yeah. Last 7 movies have basically tanked. it's not counting the Batman and Joker, which both made a shit ton of money, is a technical term.
Joker 2 is still slated to come out this year, isn't it?
2024, next year. Okay. It's the only DC movie on the slate for next year, unless Aquaman 2 gets moved. But that movie, it looks, I mean, Lady Gaga's in it. All the images that keep coming out look fantastic. So I can't wait to see that. Maybe Joaquin Phoenix will snag another Oscar for his performance. Maybe Lady Gaga will get an Oscar nomination for her performance. Who knows? But yeah, let us know in the comments below, guys. Like, is this something that's like an olive branch from Warner Brothers to the fans of Zack Snyder's vision? Or is this a hint that maybe there's more to come here and maybe Zack Snyder will make a triumphant return to DC movies and somehow kick James Gunn off his perch, which I really don't think that's what's going on here. But let us know in the comments what you guys think.